I'm going to teach you the full crash course to learn n8n and become a master by the end of this video. We've got a lot to learn today, including building 10 different projects. Everything you need will be in my GitHub description below. And the best way to learn is to get started, which leads us into the first project, RSS Feed. We're going to really get your hands dirty with n8n workflows. We're going to learn how to sign up for a free cloud trial, create an RSS feed trigger, optimize the output, and then save that into a Google Sheet. You're really going to learn some of the basics needed to understand n8n with this project. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is sign up for the cloud trial. Again, we will learn about how to set up with Docker later. So we're going to go ahead and go to n8n.io. You're going to sign in or sign up. Once you sign in, just use your email address. It is a 2-week free trial. You do not have to put in a credit card or anything. So then once you do that, you're going to have a similar dashboard. You're going to open your dashboard. And then if this is your first time here, you are going to have nothing. This is going to be a blank canvas for us to work with. What I want you to do is we're going to create our workflow, create our first one, and then we're going to get right into it with some of the basic things that you need to know about n8n. So you're going to come to the top right, click create workflow. Okay, and every time you come in here, you are going to see this add first step. So this is what's called a trigger node. This is what's going to actually start your automation workflow. So we're going to click the plus button. Now you can see there's a few things here. We can trigger manually, meaning that we are going to actually trigger this workflow ourselves. A lot of times this is really just for testing on some event. So when we get something from Telegram or Notion, or maybe we insert a new row into an Airtable, we can then start this flow, right? There's a scheduled trigger, there's on a webhook, which we will get into later, but there are different options on how to actually start your automation workflow. But for now, what I'm actually going to do is we're going to use an RSS feed. So I want you to type in RSS under search nodes and look for RSS feed trigger. So we're going to choose this. Now we open up the screen. This is the actual node. We already have the feed URL, and that's fine. We're just going to use this for our example. But here, the poll times, this means how often do you want this RSS feed to trigger to look for new feeds in n8n's blog. So we're just going to be okay with every minute. So we're going to go ahead and choose the fetch test event and just see what this returns for us. So first off, we know that this returned one item. So this is the output. We triggered the node, we triggered the trigger node, and then when we tested it, we got one item as the output. So this is like the output JSON up here in the top right. You can look at this as a table, a JSON, or as a schema. Schema is really nice to also look at as well. This might actually be for the first time really helpful for you. So this returned the creator, this is actually the creator of n8n, the title of this RSS feed, the link, the publish date, etc. So we have all of these output fields from testing this event. Okay, so now we're going to go back to Canvas. So click this button up here. This is called your canvas. This is the UI that you're going to work with the most of the time to create your workflows. Now, we have our RSS feed trigger. It's green. It's outlined in green because it was successfully tested. If it wasn't successful, it would not be green. Now, this plus button here, this means that we're going to attach another node to this RSS feed trigger. So what we want to do is actually manipulate that data, because if you double click the node again, if we look back, we don't need all of this data, right? We don't really need to do all this because we are going to save this in Google Sheets, and I don't want all of this data. So we're going to manipulate that output. So we're going to click the plus button here, and you see there's a data transformation. There's a different, all of the nodes are sectioned off into different types. So we're going to have a data transformation. We're going to click that. And there's one called edit fields. So we can modify, add, or remove item fields. So we're going to click this. This is also just called the set node. This is something that's pretty powerful with n8n. Is the drag and drop feature. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, see right here, this we have manual mapping, or you can do JSON. Don't worry about JSON, just worry about the manual mapping. I don't want all those fields, right? This is the input for this node. It was the output from the previous, but now it's the input for this node. So I just want to drag and drop. You can take these, right? So this is why I like the schema, because I can just drag and drop easily. It's just easier to see it from this point of view. So if I just want to drag and drop the creator, well, now we have the creator field, and it's taking this, right? This is JavaScript. Anything inside of the double brackets is JavaScript, right? So this is just getting the field, the actual value from the field. So this will be the name of the creator of this RSS feed. Okay, and what I want to do is just drag and drop some of these fields over and then just use those to store in our Google Sheets. So these are the fields that I want to set. So I also want the title. I'm just going to drag and drop. Probably want to save the link, maybe the actual content, and maybe the ISO date. No, this is the date that was published. You know what? What we're going to do now is go to the variables and context here. This is relatively new now. So I'm going to drag and drop this here. So this is the time that we're actually going to insert this into Google Sheets. Now, if I go to test step, this is going to error out because this $ now expects an object, but it got a string. Okay, so to fix this, what we're going to do in the properties down here, just go to add option, choose ignore type conversion errors. We're going to turn that on. And now we're going to test this step again. Okay, now it was successful. You know, we got the green little check mark and we didn't get an error on the right-hand side. So now this is the output on the right-hand side for this node. However, there's one more thing that I want to change, and this is a little bit important. Is, you know, these are the field names. So the creator, title, link, and we have content encoded. Now, I don't want that to be the actual field name, so we can modify that. So I can just erase the encoded so it just says content. And then for the $ now, I don't want, it's not an actual field name, right? So I want to say date added. So this is going to be where it's going to be the date, the time that was added to the Google Sheets. Now, what you should always do is test. So we're going to test the step again. And as you can see, the variables for the output, which store the values, are now changed. And this is going to be a lot easier to add and make more sense when we add it to our Google Sheets. Okay, now for the next step, we need to actually connect a Google Sheets node. So how do we do that? Well, we go back to our canvas. We're going to click the plus button. And another like important section is the action in app. Well, actually all these are important, right? But the action in app, this has a lot of options for us to choose from, right? Because this is where we can send email, we can attach different applications and like what they can do, such as Dropbox, you know, AWS, Microsoft, Gmail, etc. Right? There are just so many things that we can do here. But to make this easier, we're just going to type in Sheets, attach a Google Sheets, and then here are all the actions that we can perform with the Google Sheets node. Well, we want to append a row in sheet. There's a few things that are happening here, right? So first off, on the left-hand side, we have the edit fields. This is the previous node. So this was the output from the previous node, which is now the input for this node. But it also gives us the previous node, which was the RSS feed trigger. So you can see we do have all the original values that and fields that we got from the feed trigger, but we're not going to use those. We're just going to use the previous node because that's what we wanted to make it easier to insert into Google Sheets. You are not going to have a Google Sheets account here, so we need to create one. Well, you just go to the drop down here, create new credential, use OAuth 2 recommended. I'd highly recommend doing this. You're going to click sign in with Google. You're going to open up it's going to open up another window for you. You're going to choose your Gmail account, and then it's going to ask you to have access to your Google account. You're going to click continue. Now we have a Google Sheets connected credential or account to n8n that we can use whenever we want. Once you create a credential for a specific application, such as Google Sheets, then you can use that in any other workflow without having to create it again. It's going to store your credentials for you. And now the next thing is to actually set up our Google Sheets. So you're going to open up Google Sheets. You know, I have a creator, title, link, content, and date _ added. Now, why do I have these? Because in Google Sheets, the first row of the sheet is like the name of the columns that you'll want to have in here. And so these are the exact same names that I had for the output variables from when we manipulated the data, right? So the fields, these are the exact same names. And I'm going to show you now why that's important, okay? So I have the title of the sheet, RSS feed, or title of the document, RSS feed, and this actual sheet is named feed. So if I go back to the workflow, I'm going to go to document, choose from the dropdown, I'm going to choose RSS feed. Then the sheet From this drop down, I only have one sheet, so I'm going to choose feed. Now there are two ways to do this. You can manually map each column. So I could, you see, here's the variables. It knows the columns, right? Because it took the first row from Google Sheets. So I could go to the creator, I could add that here. I could take the title, I could add that here. I can do that manually, or because I made sure that they were lined up, I can choose map automatically. Okay, and there's just warning, it's basically giving you a little caution or warning that they need to be, that these fields need to be the same names as the column names in Google Sheets. Okay, so what do we always have to do is test it. So let's do that now. So let's go ahead and click the test step. It's executing the node. It might take a second. Okay, so it says it was successful. It said node parameters have changed. Test node again to refresh output. Okay, I think that's something that's relatively new. But let's go ahead and go to our sheets to look at it. And yes, look, we now have a second row that we have tested and it's successfully inserted. Let's say I come back here to my edit fields. Let's say I add a contents. I test this step. Okay, now you see, and now I change the field name. I'll come back here, go to Google Sheets. Now I'm going to test this step. Now it says that it happened. It doesn't really say it was successful, but if we look here, it actually had to add another column for me because this was a different name than the content column that I originally had. So if it is something new, it will create a separate column for you. Okay, just so that you should know what happens if they're not exactly lined up whenever you try to map all the columns automatically. Okay, so we just finished this workflow and I want to show you quickly how that you can import or share other workflows from myself or to other people. Okay, so let's say you have this workflow and you want to download it and give it to somebody. When in the workflow at the top right here, the ellipses or the three dots, you're just going to click download. Okay, it's going to down your workflow, the title. So mine is my workflow 7. So that's the name of the JSON file, right? It's going to download a JSON file. Okay, so what you would do then is give it to somebody and you don't have to worry if you have credentials. Whenever, like we create our Google Sheets, it's not going to share that with the other person automatically. They're going to be hidden. The credentials are stored for your account in the cloud or locally or wherever that may be. The only exception is if you have API keys actually stored into a node itself, which we will get to later when we get to the HTTP nodes. But as far as what we've done so far, you don't have to worry. But now, what if you're using my JSON files or somebody else's and you want to import them into your workflow to see what they've done? So here I have a brand new workflow. And what I'm going to do now is the 3 ellipses. I'm going to choose import from file. So let's say I've downloaded somebody else's JSON or you've downloaded mine. I'm going to click the one I just created, my workflow 7. As you can see, the nodes are here. Now, if I click on Google Sheets, for me, it has automatically, because Google Sheets 2 account 2 was my API account for Google Sheets or my credential, it already knows that it's there. But whenever you go to do that, you're not going to have that credential, right? You may have the same name as the credential, but you won't have that actual credential in your n8n workflow. So then all you have to do is you have to come down, select one or create the credential and put that here. Now it will have the document and the list, the from list feed, but that's it. Okay. Everything else, you just have to change up the credentials. All right. That it is really that simple to import or export or to share workflows from n8n. Okay, great job of getting your feet wet with your first automated workflow. So now we're going to go into our second project to learn a little bit more called form automation. We're going to be using Typeform for a trigger on a form submission, process and format that data. Then we're going to send that as an email through Gmail and then log that activity in Google Sheets. We have a few things to do here, and you're going to learn a little bit more about different types of nodes that n8n offers to really help out in the automation workflow. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, now for our second project, what I want you to do is go ahead and create your second workflow. So go to create workflow. And again, our canvas is starting over. Now, this time what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to deal with a form, and we're going to use something specific called Typeform. So go ahead and add the first step. And what you can do is just go ahead and type in Typeform. See, there is a Typeform Trigger. We're going to choose this. Now, what we need to do is set up our account. Now I'm just in typeform.com, right? I signed up for free. You don't have to pay for anything. You're going to create a new form. You can start from scratch, import questions, create with AI, whatever you want to do. So you can go start from scratch. They give you some choices that you can choose from. So I'm going to choose contact info. And then here, you can also go to the design at the top, go to gallery, and you can kind of pick which one, kind of how you like it to look, right? I think I chose this one right here. It's kind of just like a dark background. All you want to do is choose publish. You can also give this, a new name by at the top left, clicking my new form. You can give this a new name and test form, whatever you want to call it. Then you'll just click publish. Okay, once that is done, we do need to get an API key or a token. So at the top right, you're going to click on your account. You're going to go to your settings, go down to personal tokens on the left-hand side, and then you're just going to generate a new token up here on the top right. So just give it a name, just give it all the scopes, and then generate the token. And then what you'll do is, you'll copy whatever it gave to you. Then we're going to go back here to our automation. You're going to click here on the pencil to create a new account, or you can click the drop down, create new credential, paste in this access token, whatever that may be, and then click save. And then you should be able to start your Typeform account. It should show up in green saying that was successful. Okay, so now you have a credential to work with. Now I'm going to choose the online form. This is one that I had already created. So this will be populated with that API key that you created, that token. Okay, so if we go to test this step, what happens is, see, it's listening for this test event. The event hasn't happened yet because we haven't submitted anything. So let's go ahead and test submit something. Okay, so this is my form. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click this. I'm going to go to share. I'm going to copy this link. And then let's say you would give this to somebody else, right? So somehow they would get to this form. So I'm going to pretend like I am that person. So I would come to this form, and then Tyler AI is the company. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to click submit, and then I'm going to come back here, and it was waiting for that event to happen. And now that it did, it ran, it saw that there was a form submission, and here is the response back, or the output from that submission. Okay, now we can work with this. Now, like I mentioned, we are going to send an email. We're also going to log what happens, whether it was successful or not, because we're going to do our first error handling. So we want to go to data transformation. I want to set some fields again. Now, instead, this time we're going to do some manual mapping. So I'm going to click on here. I'm going to give this first field a name called body. So it's going to be the body of the email. And then for the value here, there's two things that we need to learn right now. There's fixed and there's expression. So fixed is just some text that you can apply here. Expression, this is what allows us to use the curly braces to have some JavaScript variables in here in order to do something with some piece of data, right? So what I could do is I could say hello, and then I could drop in the first name here. This is the variable. Okay, if this was was fixed, you see how it looks like it's just plain old text, right? This wouldn't actually say hello Tyler, but if I do expression, you can see the result is hello Tyler right here. If I highlight over this, thank you for your submission and let's drag and drop the phone number. And put a period. Okay, so this is like the body that we want to submit. This is that we're going to actually send in the email, right? So we're just kind of setting a field based on the form trigger or for the form fields that were filled out. So we're going to go and test this step. Okay, the output is body. When they have one output, again, when we get to sending the email, we can come back to previous nodes. So we're going to see that now. So we're going to go back to the canvas. We're going to click the plus button to add another node. You're going to type in Gmail. We're going to use a Gmail node now, and Gmail has a lot of actions, but what we want to do is we want to send a message. This is just like sending an email. So we're going to send a message. Now, again, you won't have a Gmail account. So you're going to go to create new credential. Make sure you're choosing OAuth 2, sign in with Google. This is the same way. It's going to open up another window. You're going to choose your email account. You just want to check that it can do all these things. You're going to click continue. This should be good for, I think, about 6 months. And then this should say account connected, and we're good. Now I have a second Gmail account credential that I can use. So the resource is what we want to do: send a message, create a label, do something with labels, do something with drafts, or a thread. But we're just going to send an email message. So the operation here is send. You can do this drop down so you can do many more things. So the to is, the previous node is edit field, but the ones before that was a Typeform Trigger. So we can actually just drag and drop that here as well. The subject can be thank you. And then for the actual message, we just want to put in this body that we had created from the previous node, which was the edit fields node. Okay, and now what we can do is we could test this. So let's go ahead and do that now. It says that it was successful. And here it is. You can see that it was. It's hello, Tyler. Thank you for submission. We will be contacting you at this phone number. We are excited to work with Tyler AI. Sincerely, Acme. Now, it's not formatted the best, but we just want to kind of ensure that we can actually send this email and do something with it. Now that we're back here, the problem is we want to make sure that this was successful, because what if something happened in the process? Like we were able to, like the person that filled out the form, it was some email address that doesn't make any sense. It's not even formatted properly. Well, let's first go through the successful route, and then we're going to do something with it if it wasn't successful. So what does that mean? Well, now we need to create a logic node. So if it was successful, do something. If it wasn't, if it failed, do something else. So now we're going to do your first logic node. We're going to input or add your first logic node. So click the plus button here. Now you're going to go to flow, right? This is flow. And then there is the if. So route items to different branches, basically if something is true or false. Basically, there's two ways we can do this, right? If there was an error, it's just gonna be some error. It's not even gonna create an ID. So we're gonna drag and drop. So these are the conditions, right? So if ID, instead I just wanna say, if this string exists, then we know that this was successful, okay? And then what you can see here is it gives the true version has one item. So we come back in here, you see the true branch has one item, the false does not, because we know that this was successful. And now what I want to do is I want to add a log to Google, a different Google Sheets saying that, hey, this was the information from the response and it was successful. So we're going to click the plus button here. I'm going to type in Sheets, Google Sheets. We want to append a row in Sheet. I have a form onboarding that I will give you that you can copy this, but at the first name, last name, phone number, email, company, and email sent. So this is either going to be like true or successful or failure, and then show us the error that we would need to go back and look at with the response. Okay. So I have this set up. It's called a form onboarding. The sheet is called responses. So I'm going to go back to my workflow. Again, we already created our credential for Google Sheets, so I do not need to do that again. So as you can see, it shows up here already. Now from the document, I am going to click the drop down, go to form onboarding, and sheet, go to responses. Now, just in case the drop down doesn't work, sometimes it doesn't work, you can choose by URL, by ID. So if you go by URL, you can actually copy the URL from the Google Sheets and then put that in there as well. And that will work just as fine. Okay, but now we see we have map each column manually. We do not have an email sent, whether it's successful or not, that we can automatically put in here. So let's just go ahead and put these in manually. So again, we can go back to a couple of nodes beforehand. So here, Typeform Trigger, we can drag and drop first name, last name, phone number, email, the company, and then here, this is the successful, right? So we can just say, this is the success branch. So we can just say successful. Then let's go ahead and test this step now. So we're gonna test this step. It's saying it was successful. If we come back here, awesome. We got this data inserted into our Google Sheets. Now what we need to do is what if all of this was incorrect, right? What if they put something in here and it was like Tyler at one.com or just even .com, right? It wasn't even like, it just wasn't like, it didn't make sense what the email was. All right. So if we test this step, what's going to happen is n8n by itself is just going to error out. It's not going to continue with the flow at all. It's just going to error out and it's going to stop with this flow. Now that could be fine in some instances, But a lot of times we don't really want that. Instead, what we want to have happen is I want to continue the flow and then log that it wasn't successful and why. So how do we do that? Well, in the settings here, on error, you see on error, it's right now it says stop the workflow. Instead, we want to continue. We're going to go back to parameters. And now if we test the step, look, we still get an output, but it's given an error. So now in the if statement, the Gmail node gives us an error. So if I test this step, look, now we have something in the false branch. So now the false branch has a node now, or has an output. So now we're going to type in sheets again. I am going to choose from the document. We're going to choose form onboarding. We're going to map everything manually. So we can say first name. Again, we're going to use the expression. So fixed means it's just text. Expression means that we can add some sort of JavaScript brackets in there for specific values. So here I'm going to say failure, and then we can say why. So we can drag and drop the error node or the error output right there. And then now let's test this step. Okay, so if we go back to form onboarding, here we again save the data, but we logged that there was a failure. Okay, because we want to know, we could come in here and check, say, okay, there was a failure. Why? So we know that we can check the parameters that something with the email address that they probably put in here. So if we come back here, we now have a full form where we take the form data, we manipulate it so that we can add an email body to send the email back to the person. Hey, we got the response. Thank you very much. And then if that was successful, let's log it. If it wasn't, let's still log that because we want to know why it wasn't successful. This is something that you should just practice in general, that if something doesn't work, we need to know why it didn't work. Okay, I know that was a little bit more, but you did great. Good job for getting through that. And the more and more we do, the more and more that we're going to learn about n8n, and you're going to feel more comfortable creating your own workflows. So now we're going to piggyback off that project. And instead of creating the body the way that we just did there for our email account, we're going to learn about basic LLM chaining. This means for our third project, we're going to learn how to use AI. So again, we're going to use the same Gmail project. Now we're going to add an AI model to create the body instead based on something coming from the Typeform submission. And you're going to understand what expressions are. This is important because expressions can really trip you up, but also be very powerful. And it's also really important when you're dealing with AI models. Let's get started. All right, now we're actually going to implement some AI as part of this workflow to have some sort of AI automation workflow. Now, it doesn't have to be an AI agent. We are just implementing AI models as part of the flow. So I'm going to copy the same project. I'm going to duplicate it, call it project 3. So instead of us editing the fields, we're going to let AI do that. Now, what I'm going to do is just delete this. Okay, you can also click the trash can here. So now there is no link between the Typeform and the Gmail. I want AI to generate the email for us based on whatever we had got from the Typeform trigger or the response that we were sent from somebody filling out the form. Now, there are a couple ways we can do this. First off, we're going to click the plus button and you're going to see advanced AI. So go ahead and choose this. And we have several things that we can choose from, right? We have an AI agent node, which we're not going to get to yet. We will get into that later. So we have an OpenAI node. So specifically for OpenAI, when we also have a basic LLM chain. Okay, so we could choose OpenAI if you want to just use OpenAI models. So if we choose this, you are stuck to their family of models. Or we can choose basic LLM chain. So if we do this, there are a couple things here. First off, so the source for the prompt is, we're not connecting this to a chat trigger node. We're going to do that in the next project. So we're going to define below, and let's just go ahead and go back to the canvas here. Let's see what's happening. We're going to connect all of this. So now we have a basic LLM chain in between the Typeform trigger and the Gmail that we want to, the body or message that we want to send through Gmail. Now, if I click the model here, you can see now we have Anthropic, Azure, Bedrock, DeepSeek, Gemini, the Googles, there's so many more options that we have to choose from. So for instance, if I choose Anthropic, I need to select a credential. Well, I don't have one yet. So I need to create one, which means I need to get an API key from Anthropic. So I just have to go to, so if I just go to console.anthropic.com, I'm going to create a new key and then call this n8n course. Go ahead and paste my API key in here, click save. And now I have a connection successful. So it was a valid API key. So now I can choose from Anthropic's line of models. So let's go ahead and just use 3.7. That is what is doing amazing for right now. So now we have the model. Now we're going to go back in here and we don't have a prompt yet. So we need to add in a prompt. But in the Typeform Trigger, let's go ahead and test this. So test this, it's listening for an event now. Now if we go back to Typeform, the same thing, same way we did it last time, we're going to copy the link, pretend like we are submitting a response in Tyler AI, and I'm going to submit. Okay, so now if we go back to the project, this is the information we got from the form submission. Okay, great. And now in the prompt here, instead of fix, we want to change it to expression so we can add in all these variables and then let it create the body of the email that we want to send. Whenever you're in this prompt, you know, it can be kind of big. You can put a lot of text in there and it can kind of seem overwhelming because it's just a small little text area. Click this little icon right here. And now it's going to make this bigger for you. So this is a simple prompt that I'm giving to AI. But you see, when I pass in the variables, because it's an expression, it's then going to have all the information that I want from it. Okay. So now that we've done this, we're going to test the step and see what it gives us to the output, right? So this is calling Claude 3.7 Sonnet with this prompt and those variables that from Typeform, it's going to create HTML dialog for us. Okay, so whenever I tested that, this is what I got. This is what I got back. So we can either look at table, you know, it kind of looks a little funky, but if we go back to Canvas and come back to the Gmail node, now what I have is let me get rid of this, is I inserted the email here in the to statement. And again, if you don't see the green here and it looks like this, that's because you have fixed. This is literally just the text. It won't give you the value here. So change this to expression. Then in the message, I just drag and dropped the text that we generated from the AI model. Now let's go ahead and test this. Okay, well, let's go to JSON here. So it was successful. And this is an example of what it looks like. It created the HTML whenever it sent the email with this information. And you know, we allowed it to generate it for us. Now, this wasn't an AI agent. This was just an AI model that we added as part of this automation flow in order to help us out so we could use it and not have to determine exactly what we want the body to look like. Although you could do that as well. Now, something that you may not want here is you can see this email was sent automatically with n8n. In order to get rid of that, under the Gmail node at the bottom, go to add option, append n8n attribution, click that so it's false. And then if we send this again, you can see that we no longer have the n8n attribution at the bottom there. And then the rest of the chain is normal. If it was successful, we're going to append it as a success in the logs. If it wasn't, it's going to tell us why it failed and what we need to look at. Okay, so let's take a step back really quick. I want to show you how you can organize your flows a little bit more. So whenever you come to your workflow, let's just take the one we just created with the Gmail and AI basic LLM chain. Now, when you look at other people's flows, you might see different colored sections that they have all over the place, especially if it's more complicated, right? Well, how they do that is if you right click anywhere in the workflow, you can click on add sticky note. You see it adds this, what they call a sticky note. And this is always going to be behind the nodes. So what I can do is I can kind of expand this. So now in this little section where I had the if statement, so if the email was successful, then we add a log to Google Sheets. And if it wasn't, then we log the error in Google Sheets as well. So then I can kind of like drag this in, but I can kind of put a little box around these nodes. Then we can edit the note so that I know whenever I come back here or whenever you look at somebody else's, this is what it's supposed to be doing. So if you just double click on the note, then you can come in here and say logging. So I know that this is going to be logging now. Then I can basically say if successful, then add to sheets, and we can maybe copy that. We can get rid of this. By the way, this is markdown. So whenever you see these like the double asterisks without the space in between the first and last word, then that means all that inside is going to be bold. And there's different types of symbols you use for markdown, and then that's what they use for these notes. Then we say if unsuccessful, then add error to sheets. Okay, we can just do something simple like this, right? So now we've changed this, and whenever I open this up again and look at it, I know that this section of my workflow is for logging. So then we can do the same thing here. We could either click this, copy and paste, and then we can kind of maybe make this smaller, maybe make it this down a little bit to get all of this. And then you can also change the color. So if you highlight over one, there's a little like paint, not an easel, whatever that's called, but holds all the different colors of paint. Then this can be red, right? So then we can say this is for basic LLM chaining. And we can maybe just say, whoops, for add a dash, this will be like a bullet point. This generates email body to send through Gmail. Okay, and then now we know when we come back in here, that's exactly what this section is doing. And then what you'll see a lot of times is that we'll have people have no sticky note over here on the left-hand side. So we can add a sticky note, drag this over. Let's make this green because that's like the beginning. And if we can say like, this is what this project is supposed to do. Like, so you give kind of the overall flow of, we start at Typeform, it's going to go through an AI, create the Gmail, send that Gmail, and then log it into Sheets, right? So we could have a separate note here to explain that. So when somebody else wants to use this, such as yourself, whenever you use or import my version of this, then you'll see what this actual project does. So you're not as confused and it makes a little bit more sense. So if you were to open this up, this is basic LLM chaining with Gmail. It waits for a Typeform submission, creates the body of the email with basic LLM chain, then sends the email, and then we log that to Sheets. Okay, now I know this is a simple example. When you look at community workflows or what other people have done, if you see on social media, it can be kind of crazy. I have other thoughts about that, but they do try to use sticky notes to make it feel more organized for you so that whenever you do need to use it, or if they give it away, then you can import it and you can at least go through each section and understand what's going on, or at least hopefully. Okay, awesome job with that project. You have done a great job. Now we want to be able to do a little bit more. And so what we're going to do now is really understand what HTTP nodes are and how to use them and how to really make them help your project with this fourth project involving Serper and Firecrawl. And if you've never used those two things or you don't know what they are, that's okay because I'm going to show you. So in this project, we're going to learn HTTP nodes, which are really important. I'm going to show you how to easily import curl commands, and that's okay if you know what those are. We're going to scrape and crawl a website and then save that information to Airtable, which is an online database. Okay, this is, I believe, an important project to really understand because HTTP nodes can be really powerful and you're really going to need to understand because you will use them more often in future projects that you do on your own. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, this is important because you're really going to understand HTTP request nodes, which is going to lead into vector databases and then having a chat bot. Okay, so they've made HTTP request nodes pretty easy when you want to integrate an API that you are not familiar with inside of it. Okay, so let's get started. You know how to create a workflow now, so go ahead and create a new workflow. For the trigger node, we are just going to trigger this manually. For now, this is going to end up being a scheduled trigger, but for now, let's just make this manual. Now, the next thing is we want to Google search using Serper.dev to give us back URLs, right? In order to do that, we need to give it something that we want to search for. So go ahead and click the plus button. We are going to go to data transformation, set, and we're going to create a field here. So we're going to call this topic, and then let's just call it OpenAI. They've done a few things lately. So the test of step, the output should just be the topic. It says OpenAI. Okay, great. So this is what we're going to search for. So if you want to change what it would search for, you can just modify that here. Now, the next one is we're going to add an HTTP request node. And the reason is, so Serper, there's no like Serper.dev node here in n8n, and that's okay. You're going to actually find that a lot, that there might be certain APIs that you want to integrate, but they don't exist yet. They have some way, we need some way to connect to that. So instead, we're going to search for HTTP request, add this in here, and this might look kind of complicated, right? Typically, you would choose the method, give it the URL, if there's any authentication, etc. All of those things. However, I'm going to make this, and n8n has made this so simple. So all you need to do is go to Serper.dev, log in. It's free. Don't worry about paying anything. What you're going to do then is you're going to go to an API key. You're going to actually go ahead and create an API if you haven't already, but then go to Playground, and then look what we can do, right? See, here's my API key that I will change by the time you guys see this. Now I'm going to change this to curl. I'll show you why. And this is playground. This is something like sample we can do, right? So let's say instead of just a typical Google search, I want to do news, right? And so instead of this, I want to choose OpenAI. And then the date range, I want to do in the past 24 hours. And yeah, let's just give 10 results back. Okay, so what that's done, it's modified the curl command here. So you could just, do this simple search, doesn't take long, right? And this the results took like 1 second. This is everything that you would get from that. So instead, let's go back to the code. Let's copy this. This is a curl command. We're gonna go back to our flow and see at the top of this node here where it says import curl. So click this, paste that, choose import, and voila, it has everything you need in here already, okay? Now, if I were to test this, look what happens. Here is the exact output, maybe not the exact news searches, but the exact output that we had gotten whenever we did this in the playground here in Serper.dev. That's amazing, right? So you no longer even need to understand what all of that means. You just copy and paste the code as long as you have curl selected and put that into this, import that into this node. And it does all this for you, okay? That's absolutely amazing. Okay, so what it's done is you can see that it tells you how many items were output even on the canvas. If we come in here, there was one item, and what this is an array of, we have an array of news here, right? So if we do this, there were actually 10 total items in the array, but we also have some other things here that we don't need. So all we care about is what is in this news list or array list. And so next we need to do is click the plus button. We are going to do something called split out. This is turn a list of items into separate items. Okay, so all we need to do is see we have the news here, news of 0, news of 1. We're going to drag and drop news here, click test step, and now we have 10 items, each with just a title, link, snippet, date, and so forth, okay? So what we want to do now is we want to scrape all of this information and then store that somewhere. Okay, now it says it output 10 items. Now what you don't need to do is do a loop. Right? I know the first thing is, we may need to loop over 10 items. No, you don't. By default, n8n is going to, the next node that we have that executes each of these items will, by default, the behavior is it will execute that node, in this case, 10 times over each of the items, okay? So we can do the plus button here, and instead we are going to have another HTTP request. So HTTP request. Okay, we don't have anything here yet, but now we're going to use Firecrawl to scrape these websites. Okay, Firecrawl is free. Again, you just sign up if you haven't already. Then you want to go to Firecrawl's dashboard. Okay, you have your API key here. But again, we're going to go to Playground. And this is just for a single URL scraping, right? So what we could do is we could pick this link. So I could just copy this in the Playground here, paste this here, run. Now this is going to scrape this URL for us, okay? And then we're going to do the same exact thing. Okay, so here's the markdown. This is that URL scraped. Okay, so we are going to do, so this is what we're going to do. Now under the options, you want to choose wait for 1000 milliseconds. You're on the free plan, so you need to wait a little bit. It only allows you to do so many requests at once, like within a second. So now we're going to choose get code. So what we're going to do here is it'll by default have Python, choose curl, copy this in the workflow at the top here, go to import curl, paste that in. And then once you import that, this is going to have the hard-coded URL. Instead, remove that. And then in the quotes, you want to drag and drop this JSON link right here. And I know what you're thinking. I only see one of the 10 items here, right? Why do I only see one? Well, this is how it works, right? You're only going to see the one. You could see more, right? So here's, if you still get the JSON here are actually all 10 of the items, right? Here are all 10 of the items. It's just that I was in the schema view. But what's going to happen is instead of, we don't have to loop. By default, this is n8n. This is how it works. It's going to loop through each of those items, grab their link, and then it's going to perform the scrape on each of those URLs. And so what you need to do also is go to settings, and on error, just click continue, because what could happen is it could try to scrape some of these websites and something could be wrong with the website at the time or whatever. It could it could be timed out, it could be down. So if it times out and it tries to scrape it, then it's just going to halt the whole workflow, and we don't want that. If it errors out, that's fine. Continue on to the next URL. And just to show you that this is going to take a minute, right? Because it's going to scrape all those websites. Here it says it output 10 items. So this one was success. This one was an error. It was success. And again, here's like the markdown from the actual, this is the markdown from the website. So we're going to come here. That was an error. This was successful, error, success, right? So some of them were successful, right? Now, something you can do to kind of help with the workflow is on the ellipses here, there's the 3 dots above a node. You can choose rename, and this would be Google searching. And then this one is going to be rename to Firecrawl scraping. Okay, just so you can kind of make sure that when you come back to this, right, that you understand what each node is doing. And now let's go ahead and save this into a different database called Airtable. Now, Airtable has paid plans, but I've only used the free version, and I have had plenty. It's been perfectly fine for me. Okay, so you're going to go to airtable.com. If you haven't already, sign up. Again, like I said, it's free. Here, you're going to create your first base, which is just like the database. So mine's called YouTube. So I would click on here. Okay, so to create the table, all you need to do is whenever you go to import a new table from scratch, you will have a title. When you go to edit the field, you can choose single line text. For the URL, again, you can choose edit field, single line, or actually this can just be single line text. I'm going to save that. And then for the markdown, you want to edit this field. This needs to be long text. Okay. Now the next thing you will need is you need to get an API key. So if you go to your account, then go to Builder. So at the top right here, your account, little icon there, go to Builder Hub. Now you're going to create a new token. Name this whatever you want, n8n. You want to add the scopes for data records read and data records write. And then the base, you want to add the base, whatever it is that you named it. So you're going to create this token, copy that. We're going to go back to the workflow, and we are going to save that in a minute. But the first thing is, for the Firecrawl scraping, as we know, not all of them were successful, right? So we need to have an if statement. So if we're going to say the success value was true. Now this is a Boolean. So you're going to say, you can just go choose from here is Boolean is true. Let's test this step. Now it's going to iterate over each of them. 7 of them were true. 3 of them errored out. Okay, that's great. So now all the ones that were successful, now we want to add our Airtable node. We want to create a record. We want to create a credential. You're going to paste in your access token here. When you do that, click save. It'll say your connection is successful. It should show green. It shouldn't error out. And then now you are connected to your database table. So your database. Now we want to create a record. I'm going to choose from the list. So this is the base, right? Database. So YouTube was what I called it. Yours will be named whatever you named it. So my n8n news. Okay, so title, URL, and markdown. This is what we named it. Okay, so for the markdown, we're going to put here. We can actually go back to the schema, right? Because the if statement or Firecrawl scraping, sorry. The Firecrawl scraping just has the markdown. If we go back to split out this node that we use to split everything out from after Google searching, we can put the title in here and then the link. Now, I mean, you could get this from the Firecrawl scraping, right? But it makes it's easier to read from here. Okay, so now what we need to go is the settings, and then on error, continue the workflow. Because even though we got successful, there could be some error with the database table, right? But we want to continue the workflow for now. Now let's test the step. If everything's set up, we should insert some number out of the 7 items that were in the true statement. They should be uploading into our database table. So if we go back to Airtable, I'm gonna go back from Builder Hub, go back to my YouTube database account, my n8n news, and look at this. 6 of the 7 were successful. Now, if we kind of come back here, we can go see, okay, so there was one that couldn't be processed. Some reason there was some value for this request, it just couldn't put into the markdown. and that's okay. But all the other ones were successful. Okay, great job with the project. It's important to really understand how to web scrape, and more importantly, how to use HTTP nodes and understand APIs. Well, now for the 5th project, we're gonna learn about vector databases and creating your first chatbot. So we're gonna add a Qdrant vector database to insert data from the data that was retrieved from web scraping, then talk to that data with a chatbot, which means you'll learn how to use chat within n8n. There's a little bit going on in this project, so pay attention, you will get through this. Let's get started now. So you're first off going to go to Qdrant.com or Qdrant.tech. You're going to log in. You can do this for free. Go ahead and sign up if you haven't already. And then once you are signed in, you will come to a screen like this. It may look a little different by the time you watch this. It already has changed up a little bit for me, but we're going to create our first cluster. You get one cluster with the free version. So let's call this n8n course. And then, n8n course. Can't have spaces. We're going to choose create free cluster. Choose an area or a region that is close to you. I'm probably Northern Virginia is probably closest to me. So now what I need to do is we have this key here, right? This is the API key that's been created. Let's go ahead and copy this. We're going to go back to our flow, the same flow that we were just using. Instead, this time we're going to type in here Qdrant. We're going to type in Qdrant vector store. We want to add documents to the vector store. Okay, but I already had an original Qdrant API, but I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to create a new credential. I'm going to paste in this API key. So we're going to come back here. And what we need now is the actual URL for Qdrant. So we're going to take this endpoint, copy this, come back here and paste in this Qdrant URL. Now, if we click save, it should say the connection tested successfully. Okay, great. Now we successfully have a connection to Qdrant to insert documents. This is what we're going to do. We're going to insert documents. Now, we don't have any collection, right? There is no collection here. All right, then at the top here, there's an open dashboard back in Qdrant. Click this. Now enter your API key. I'm going to click apply. And let's say you don't have it copied anymore because you can't go back in. Just create a new API key. Copy that in here, and then you will have to edit. You will have to edit what is in your n8n credential. Okay, so now here what we're going to do is we're going to go to the tutorial on the left-hand side. We're then going to go to Quick Start. We just want to create a collection. Now I'm going to have you just copy in what I'm going to put here. Okay, so I named this collection /n8n. The vector size is 1536, and the distance we're just going to use cosine. So you can name your collection n8n or whatever you want to name it. Okay, so after you do that, you're just going to click run, and then up here it should say the result is true, or that it was basically successful. Okay, so now if you go back to your workflow, now in here you click the three dots. You're going to refresh the list. Then you're going to choose n8n because we just created a collection, and this batch size you can just keep that there. Now I'm just going to update this slightly a little bit. So after the Airtable, is up here, I just dropped this down. Again, you can move all these around. We're going to kind of make this so it looks a little bit neater, and we'll do some more things with this, right? So after the Airtable, by the way, there are multiple ways that we can go about this. We can create a separate workflow for this. I just want to show you all the ways that are possible to put all these nodes together. Okay, and we can go ahead and clean this up later. We can do that yourself. We can have, like I said, separate workflows. Doesn't matter. I'm just showing you, this is a tutorial to show you how these things work. Okay, so I actually am going to add another field or another node called set. We've done this before. And what I want to do is I just want the markdown from each of everything that was successfully inserted into Airtable. Okay, so we're going to come back here. Now that is the case, we want to go ahead and run this, run the nodes right here, edit fields. Okay, but now to make this work, to actually insert the documents, we need to add the embeddings and the documents that we want to upload, or insert into the vector database. So let's first click the plus button for under embeddings. Then you can choose from a different ones that you would prefer to use, but I'm going to choose OpenAI. This means you need to go get an API key from OpenAI. Let's go ahead and do that now. You can go to the platform.openai.com. You can come in here, go to settings, then you can go to API keys, and then get an API key from here. Okay, then I'm just going to paste this in here, save it, and I have a successful connection. Okay, now you can choose different models. Just the text embedding 3 small is fine. So now we have our embeddings. Now we need to add the documents, okay? We're going to choose, once you click the plus button under document, you're going to choose the default data loader. All input data is fine, but now we need a text splitter. So we just go ahead and choose the recursive character text splitter. Now the chunk size, let's do 2000, and then the chunk overlap. You can make this however you want, right? But what I've seen is, a default kind of setting is 10% of whatever your chunk size is. So if your chunk size is 2000, then the overlap is just 200. Okay. So now with that done, we are going to go into the Qdrant node and you're going to go ahead and test this step. Okay. We have some output. We have some logs. We can see the input, the output. This is how it so this is each of these page content, 2000 characters. And then it just added these recursively as chunks into the vector database. Okay. See, output 192 items. Now, if we actually go back to Qdrant, okay, so if we're back in our cluster, again, you open up the dashboard, you can see that we have an n8n collection now with 192 points. Let's go just open this up. So if you click this, okay, you can see the content that is associated with each point. Kind of give some metadata, but let's go ahead and go into what's called the graph over here. If we go to the graph, we can then, let's say the limit is 200. So you're going to change this limit over here. I know it's kind of hard to see in the top right, but this is what's going to execute. And so we can see how it actually looks in the kind of a more 3D model. Click the run function and look at this. We can scale in, and each of these points in this vector database, each of these has specific text, okay? So when we go to have our chatbot search through our vector database, it's gonna look for similar things compared to what we're actually searching for in these points in this 3D vector data, in this 3D space, okay? So what we've done is all the documents that we have added into Airtable, we have now split out into points inside of this Qdrant vector database. Now, the next thing we need to do is actually add a chatbot to this. So you're going to right click on the space here, right click anywhere in here, right click, add node. We want to type chat. So we want to have a chat trigger. Okay. And then we're going to come out of this. So we have this chat trigger or chat message received. So we're going to click the plus sign. And then we are going to choose AI agent. Okay. We want to connect to the chat trigger node this time. Okay. There we're okay. Now we need to input the chat model. Now we already also had an Anthropic one, so we can just add that. That's pretty simple. You can add memory, you can add tool, you can add quite a few things here. Now we have memory and we have tool. Now we do need to add a tool because we want to connect to our vector database and then chat with it. So go to tool here, then you can you can just search for Qdrant Vector Store right here. We already have the API key. We want to retrieve documents. You can just type in n8n. And for the description, talk with your data. We're going to modify this. We're going to modify this in a minute. But for the Qdrant Qdrant collection, choose n8n. And this is what this limit is. If you hover over these are the number of top results you want to fetch from the vector data store. Let's just change this to 6. And then if we come back here, you see that there is an embedding. So we're going to go ahead and choose the OpenAI embeddings that we already used. So we don't need to do anything else with this. So I'm going to go back to Canvas. And now we are about set. So what we can do is let's go ahead and open the chat. What are some of the latest news about OpenAI? So then if I run this, you see the AI agent is working. It's using the model. It's going to go to the vector data store, get relevant information, go back to Anthropic's chat model, and then formulate that into a response based on the prompt that we had in the AI agent. So if we kind of move this up a little bit, here's information related to what we got from the vector data store. So if we choose this, right, we can see that what are the latest news about OpenAI. This is the response. This is essentially points that it retrieved that it found similar based on what we had stored in the vector database. Okay, so then if we come back here, we can go to the AI agent. And then as you can see here for the prompt, the user message, it filled in what we asked in the chat. Okay, so it's going to be something different where we can keep chatting away. Okay. Can you give me more information about OpenAI? Okay, so it would be whatever we want. So it's going to come back in here again. It's going to go back to the vector store. It's going to do another similarity search about what we are asking. And then it's going to go back to our model, formulate that into a way that it can respond to us with, and then send that back to us in the chat here. So here's just different, some of it might be the same, but it formulates it differently based on what it retrieved from the vector database. So this is really cool stuff. And if we go back to the AI agent, right, the input was different this time because this was the next thing that we added to the chat. Okay, so you can exit this out, right? And also what you can do with this chat is you can click this little button here and that removes the chat. So we can exit out this. And the next thing you want to do is I want to change this node, right? I want to delete this and I want to add another trigger node. And what I want to do is add the schedule trigger node. And I want this to be done every day. Midnight's fine. Actually, let's do 6 a.m. Okay, so at 6 a.m., I want to reconnect this. So every day at 6 a.m., it is going to go through here. It's going to come in here through this flow. It's going to Google search, scrape them, and then insert into the vector database. And then we can come back in here and we can open a chat either here or at the bottom, open a chat, and then talk about the information that we had scraped with our vector database. Now it's only going to work automatically is at the top here. It says inactive if you activate your workflow. So now our trigger has been activated, meaning that every day now at 6 a.m. it's actually going to trigger this, and then it's going to add more information to our vector database. It's truly amazing. This is a really awesome automation. All right, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm just going to take 2 minutes of your time. I'm going to show you how to install Docker locally. Now, for the rest of the project, I'm going to be using the cloud version because, like I mentioned in the beginning also, the integrations are much easier. But you can certainly do them with Docker. They just take a little bit more time. But n8n has all of the documentation you need for the integrations. Google is really the main culprit here. But let's get into seeing how we can use Docker locally. There are 3 steps. We have to install Docker, create this volume for it, and then essentially run the image in Docker. Now, the first thing is to install Docker. You're going to go to docker.com and we're going to download the Docker for your machine. So whether it's Windows, Linux, Mac, pick this one. All you have to do is download, install it, and run the Docker on your machine. You'll know that whenever you have a little icon that looks like a whale with some containers on it. Now you don't actually have to open up Docker to use it because we're going to have these next 2 commands to run in your terminal. So if you're in Windows, open up your command terminal, or in Mac, just open up terminal like I have here on the right hand side. You're going to copy these commands, which I will have in the description. So you're going to copy this, you're going to run that. Once you're done running that, you're going to copy the second one, paste that in here, and this is actually going to start running n8n locally on your machine. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to press enter, and if you happen to get this message, I did this on purpose, maybe. If you get this message, it's because Docker is not running on your machine. So you need to go to Docker and then run it. And now let's try this again, now that I have Docker running. So now if I run this, it's already not giving me some errors, which is a very good thing. And what it's going to do is going to give you a local host URL. You're going to copy that into a web page, and then that will allow you to open up n8n and start running it. Okay, and we'll get to this later, but I already have active workflows running. I have 1 right now. And so what I'm going to do is just copy this local host, paste that into my web page. Now, if it's your first time here, you do need to sign up locally. You just need to have some sort of authentication, right? So give your email address, your password, and then sign in. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And here we are. We are now having n8n open and running locally on our machine. Okay, so I know that was a little bit of information to understand there and get through with that n8n workflow, but you did it. I'm proud of you. Now let's move on to the next thing, and we're going to do something maybe a little bit more fun this time. And we're going to connect a front end to an n8n workflow. We're going to create something called a receipt analyzer, which means we need to create a front end with bolt.new. You're going to learn about a webhook, and then we're going to connect this front end with that n8n workflow. I think this is a lot of fun. And for some of you, you really want to understand how you can connect a UI to your n8n workflow, and you will learn that right now. Okay, so a big thing that we're gonna learn with this project to connect a front end to an n8n workflow to send information back to the front end is the webhook trigger. Okay, so go ahead and create a new workflow. You know how to do this by now. You're becoming an expert at all this stuff. So we're gonna add, to create a new trigger node, instead, we're gonna search for webhook. We're gonna do the top one where it starts the workflow when a webhook is called. And it's gonna look a little different. So we have a test URL, a production URL, we have a HTTP method, a path, and so forth, right? There are quite a few things going on here. Well, the first thing is change this method to a post. And then the response, instead of immediately, we want to do this when the last node finishes, and we can keep the first entry JSON. We can keep that as it is. Now we're going to come back here, and I'm going to show you what to do for the prompt for bolt.new. But we're going to go to bolt.new. If you haven't yet, sign up for bolt.new. It's free. There is a cap per day on how many tokens you can use to have it generate stuff for you. So I tried to make this prompt as clear and concise as possible so that there aren't too many errors, but I can't guarantee everything. There are chances that it just, kind of fails for you. Okay. But basically we're going to be creating a front end that's going to take an image of a receipt, and then it's going to send to the back end to analyze that receipt and then send the results back to the front end so that we can display them. Okay. So what we're going to have here is I have this whole response here for you that you'll be able to copy, or you can make up your own, however you want to do this. But there's a test URL and a production URL. Let's talk about this for a second. For the test URL, when this is not active, this is the URL that we want the front end to connect to. But if we set this workflow as active, then we'll always use the production URL. And if you noticed, they are different. So just be wary of that, okay? But for now, we're gonna use the test URL. You can just click this to copy it. Now we're gonna take that, and inside of this prompt, you'll see places where the target URL is this placeholder. We're just going to paste that there. And then down here, we have another one where we're going to replace our target URL here. This means that when the front end, when a button is submitted, so we can analyze the image of the receipt, we're going to send that to the backend. Okay, so now just going to click this button. Now it's going to create the whole front end for us. Now I'm not saying that we won't need to do anything to modify it, but this should get us to where we need to do, at least for testing purposes. But if something happens, then we need to tell it to fix the error, okay? Okay, now I also just downloaded a sample receipt from the backend. And in this workflow automation, in order to test this, you need to say listen for test event. Okay, so now it's listening for the test event with the test URL that we copied here. So now bolt.new, we're about to find out, is whenever I click the button to analyze receipt, it should, when I upload a file and click this, it should send to that URL, which is the webhook URL. So let's try it. So I'm going to upload a file. I have a Whole Foods PNG file. Here's just a sample preview, and then we're going to analyze the receipt. Okay, now it worked, right? I'm actually surprised it worked on the first try. Like this is not me editing that. This is the first try. So what it did was it gave us the receipt image on the back end. Okay, that's great. So now what we can do with this is we're going to add another node. I'm going to add an OpenAI Analyze Image node. This means you make sure you have your OpenAI account. Then we're going to analyze the image. We're just going to choose GPT-4o. And then for this, okay, so I have the text input. This is just kind of telling it some things that I would like to see or to get from the receipt. And instead of, you might be at table by JSON or binary, make sure you have binary. And then the input type is going to be a binary file. Now, this is called receipt image. So that's what we need to put here. Okay, make sure you have simplify output. That just helps out so the output from this isn't so scattered. We're going to test this step. This should give us some just analysis of what we have. Okay, and so now what we can do is, that's not a good way to send that back to the front end. Let's go ahead and I'm going to add another OpenAI node. And I'm going to just call this message a model. I'm going to choose the GPT-4o model for this. So I'm going to scroll down to GPT-4o. The resource is the text. So now the prompt is, I want to here's the content. Here is the content from a receipt. And then we can, move that down a little bit, bring over the content variable. Okay, and then what I want to do is have it output the content as JSON and then tell it how I want the properties to be set so that when we send it back to the front end, it knows exactly how and what to retrieve that information from. Gave it a sample JSON format that I want called the place of purchase, the items and price, the address, method of payment, etc., and just make sure that these are like the variables that are output so that every time it gets sent back to the front end, it will be able to correctly extract from these variables. Okay, and how I got there again is there's a button right here in the text area. You click that and it pops it up into a bigger area so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test this step. And this should just create JSON format for us. And it does. So we have items and price, array, the address, method of payment, and the place of purchase. Okay, great. Now we don't need all of that information. So I'm going to add another method or another node called set so that we only have the content here. So I'm going to test this. And now we need, yeah, this is great. Now we just have all the information within inside of the content. Okay. So now what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to go back to bolt.new. I'm going to say, here is the sample output sent back to you. Modify it so you receive this information properly. Okay, so now you can see what it's kind of doing is it's creating a receipt item. It's kind of creating the models on the front end so that it can retrieve everything properly that we send it and what we want it to display nicely onto the screen, right? For testing purposes, you have to choose test workflow. Okay, now we're going to go to bolt.new. We're going to upload another file, the same file again. Then I'm going to choose analyze receipts. On the back end, you can see it working through the flow. So we got the item properly. It's analyzing the image. It's going to output that correctly in JSON, set the fields, and we're going to cross our fingers and see if this worked. And it did. We got the details, the items, and the method payment method, the address where we got it from, and the store. Now you could modify this to however you would like to, but actually this is amazing. I can't believe this pretty much worked on just 2 prompts, right? A lot of times some more things happen, but I think I tried to make the prompt initially better so you wouldn't have to go through that, especially if you're in the free version. Then you only have so many tries essentially for that day or for today whenever you're trying this. But this, this is a whole flow, right? We now have a front end that is connected to the back end, which in this case, the back end is an n8n automation flow, and that's going to send information back. Now we will need to change this. If I change this to active, workflow activated, the problem is that test URL is no longer going to work. We have to come to the production URL, copy this. We're going to go back to bolt.new, and I'm going to say, can you change the workflow to use this webhook instead? I'm going to copy the webhook. So then what it's going to do is it's going to update. It should only update the webhook for the production URL now. And then we're going to go ahead and test this a different way, but we're also going to deploy this so that you have your own Netlify production public secure URL. Okay, so the first thing is we have the workflow active. Okay, so this is active, right? So I'm going to go back to bolt.new and we're going to test this out. We're going to go to upload file, upload this same image. We're going to analyze the results. Okay, I'm going to show you something that's going to be a little bit different. It's going to get into a kind of a way of how to debug things within n8n workflow. Okay, so now we're back here. Now you see we had like the same check marks. This is the same everything. So if I just refresh this, now what happened was whenever it's in the active state, it's not going to live show you each node as it is successful. Instead, at the top here, if you go to executions, this is the one that we just executed in production, right? This was the output. Now, the way I test this is let me do it again. Let me upload another file, or you know what? Instead of that, I can just have it analyze this receipt again. So analyze the receipt. We're going to come back here, and this is going to auto refresh with a new execution right here. It's running. So you can actually click on this. It will show whenever it's done the execution. And this is how it's going to actually work when this is in production ready. So if something failed, it will tell you it failed. You can come in here and you can go to a specific node to see exactly how it failed. Okay. I mean, and then we can see in here, it still has the same the same output as we expect, right? It's the same receipt. But this is really how any workflow, when it's in production, how you can go back to executions, or if you've tested, right, you can go back to different executions here that we've tested out quite a few times, that you can test out and see what's going on, okay? And right here, this means that this was a test execution. These two, what we just did, we put it into production. So I tested it twice in actual production URL, right? So this is how, okay, awesome. I think that was an important skill to learn on how to connect n8n workflows using Webhook to anything else that you want, okay? So that was really important. You don't even have to have a UI for that. You just need to know how to connect that Webhook URL and the difference between test and production URLs. Now for the 7th project, we are going to create a social media content creation with sub workflows. Now the reason I really want to teach you this is because you can see some of these really complicated workflows that people have created. And the problem with that is it's not easy to maintain. And so I want to be able to compartmentalize a lot of those sections into separate flows, but they all are used by a single workflow. And if that didn't really make any sense, because in this project, we're going to learn how to generate social media posts, create sub workflows for each social media platform. We're going to use the vector database for data and then log that into an Airtable. There's a little bit going on here, but this is a really important section that I really think you should understand. Let's get started. Okay, so go ahead and create a new workflow. Again, this is an addition onto the last project where we stored information that we scraped into a vector database. So we're going to go ahead and create our trigger node. So just do a manual trigger node for now. And then to attach this, we want to attach the AI agent. So we're going to go to Advanced AI, then AI agent. And then instead of connecting to a chat trigger node, which we're not going to do, we're going to use define below, and we'll end up filling that in. Okay, so, and then if this happens, just delete that chat message node there. Okay, so for the chat model, this is the AI model that we want to attach to this. Now, at this point, you have either, if you've just been following along, you have an OpenAI account and you have an Anthropic account. So I'm just going to use Anthropic. You can use whichever one you want, right? If you want to choose Google, then you're just going to have to create the account for that. Now for the tool, we're going to connect to the Qdrant vector database that we stored the web scraping information to. So I'm going to, click the plus button for tool, then choose Qdrant vector store, use the same account. And this time we are going to be retrieving documents. Now to name this, you can just put n8n, whatever you really want to put. And for this expression, we'll come back to that last. The Qdrant collection, we created one called n8n, and you can leave the limit here as 4. So for the description, it's saying here that you need to explain to the LLM what this tool does. So this tool is to just really retrieve information from our vector database. So you can make this generalize if you'd like to for now. I'm just saying I need you to retrieve data to be used in a post later. Okay, so now we're almost done with this, but the problem is we need an embedding for the Qdrant vector store. So you're going to click the plus button here. Now, before we had used OpenAI, so you're more than welcome to use OpenAI. You can keep the text embedding 3 small. That is perfectly fine. Now we are done with this. Now we're going to go back into our AI agent. I'm just going to paste something here. All I say here is I need you to do some research based on the information you have collected from the database. Just retrieve 4 different points of data from the vector database. Okay, so now what we have is we have an AI agent that is going to go to our Qdrant vector store that we had done previously. It's going to retrieve some information from there that can be used as a social media post. Now, instead of having the direct nodes here for each social media post, because, if you create something for LinkedIn, create something for Twitter, for Facebook, Instagram, etc., everything is going to be handled a little differently. So in order to do that, we are going to be creating sub workflows. Now, again, sub workflows are going to allow us to actually have different workflows, but everything's going to be compartmentalized so that if we need to adjust or update something, we can go to that specific subflow and just edit that for each platform. Okay, we're going to work with 2 platforms, LinkedIn and X. Let's just go ahead and create one so it makes sense, but click the plus button after the AI agent. And what you're going to type in is workflow. And we want to execute a sub workflow. Now, in our case, the action is execute a sub workflow is, we don't have one yet. And that's fine. Okay, so the source, just keep it as database. And the workflow from the list, we're going to create a sub workflow. Okay, so just click create sub workflow. It's going to open up a new tab, and this is what it looks like. So this is basically a trigger for this sub workflow that is going to be executed by another workflow when it gets here. Okay, so let's go ahead and come in here to see what it looks like. And for the parameters, let's just go, we just want to accept all the data that's coming in. Okay, whatever comes into here, we want to accept it. All right, we can go ahead and delete this dummy node. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add another node. You can type in LLM. This is going to be a basic LLM chain, and really setting this up in case you want to add other LLMs. After this, you do not need to have an AI agent. You just have a simple basic LLM chain, but we are going to define below where the source is not going to be from a chat node. So I'll have all this here, but this is essentially the prompt that I had Google Studio come up with for me so that I can create the LinkedIn post, okay? And so the big thing here that I'm gonna show you is this JSON.output, right? So we first need to make sure this is expression so that whenever we open this up, this JSON.output, whatever is being brought in from whenever I tested this, it was an output variable, which I believe we can define beforehand, but by default, it was output. So if I just say JSON.output, it's going to bring all the data in that it got from the vector database from the AI agent whenever it comes to here. And then what we would like to do is, well, we first need to have a model. So for here, I'm just going to use Anthropic again. But that's not all we really want, right? I actually kind of want this to be structured when it goes back from this sub workflow. So I'm going to click on this. Again, I'm going to click on the basic LLM chain. I'm going to check the require specific output format. Now, whenever that happens, it says you can connect an output parser on the canvas to specify the output format you require. And now we have this output parser coming from the basic LLM chain node. So now we want to click the plus button here to add an output parser. Of these three, I'm going to choose structured output parser so that I can tell it an example of what I would like it to be. So here I'm going to have, I want to output two things, the platform and the actual post. So here we can say platform. And then this is an example, right? So here I'm going to say LinkedIn. And then for the cities, this is going to be a post. And then instead of having a list, we can say this is a sample post. Okay. So again, this is an example JSON that I want it to generate for me so that I will always have the platform and the post from here always brought back in this format. Now we are pretty much done with this. Now this is set up to where if you want to add more AI to this, right? Once it creates this LinkedIn post, maybe you want to have resources that fact check where it came from, make sure that everything is accurate. You could add your own data in here. Like once it creates it, now format it to how you have other example posts that you could get from your Google Drive or wherever that may be, right? But for now, this is set up in a way that you can modify this here however you want. And while we're here, let's go ahead and change this to say LinkedIn flow. Okay, and then we're gonna come back here. Okay, this is one of the workflows. Now we can come through here. Instead of the list from my sub workflow 1, we can change this to say LinkedIn flow. Okay, so now this agent, whatever it gets from the Qdrant vector store, the information, it's going to send it to this workflow. But now we want to add another one for X. So we're going to do the same thing. Type in workflow. We're going to execute a sub workflow. We're going to execute a sub workflow. And we're actually going to make this a little bit easier on ourselves. Okay, so we have a LinkedIn flow. Why don't we just duplicate this? So at the top right here, you see LinkedIn flow, click the 3 dots, duplicate. Instead, we want this to be called X flow. Duplicate. It's going to open up in another tab. And now there's just a few things that we have to change. The structured output parser, I know it says LinkedIn and it doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to have it say X because that's an example for this flow. But for the basic LLM chain, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to update this prompt really quick. Okay, so I've done the same thing. And again, make sure if you're using variables, right here, the double brackets, the double curly braces, make sure you have the expression, not fixed, expression. Okay, then it will fill in JSON.output from whatever's being brought in from the previous node. Okay, make sure if it says fixed, it'll literally just take that as the text, double curly braces, JSON.output. All right, make sure that is the case. And then we are done there. Okay, for now, we're gonna go back here. Let's execute sub workflow. Let's come into here. We're gonna choose from a list. Now we just created this Xflow, and now we should be good to go. But the problem is we need to converge these together because I wanna save these posts in an Airtable record. But first, let's go and test this out. So in order to test this, because we set this to manual, just click down here, test workflow. And then we're gonna let the agent go through the Qdrant vector store. It's gonna go through it a few times. Then it's gonna go through each of these workflows, sub workflows. So we should get back a LinkedIn post and an X post. So we can actually see in here, this is what it gathered. These are like kind of the news that it gathered. And then it went through here. Let's see, it created, so LinkedIn. Elon Musk has sold the social media platform X. Okay, so this is based on April 4th, 2025. So whenever I scrape this, I actually scraped that yesterday with the previous project, right? That was from my time, that was yesterday. So I know that's correct. Then let's open up X's Subflow. And then, yeah, so here it did the same thing, all right? I know that this is based on information that we actually got yesterday. Okay, great. And if you want to check, right, you can come in here. Let's see, go to table. Yeah, you could check some of this here that it got information that matches what it's trying to tell us. All right, so that's great. That worked. If that didn't work, make sure that in the sub workflows that the JSON.output variable that's going in there, make sure that you have that set to expression. Okay. Now, again, the output, if we look at this, we had the platform and the post. That's what we wanted from the sub workflow, platform and post. Okay. Although this should say LinkedIn. I don't think that I didn't save this. Because I didn't save that, it still brought that as X. So whenever we go to retest this later, it will say X. Okay. But now we want to, the next thing I could do is that for each of these, I could put an Airtable record. I could create an Airtable node for each of these, and then then I could save them separately, right? You could do that. That's fine. You could also do that in the sub workflow. You don't even have to do that here. But this is set up so where all I really want to do is add sub workflows right here from this data. I want them all to converge back here and then save everything into an Airtable, right? But then if I were to do that, then here I'd have to create another node afterwards, and I just don't want to have to do that. I want everything to converge, all the data, and then have one node for Airtable to save the data. So like I said, merge, there just happens to be a node that can do that. So it doesn't matter which one you choose. Let's click the plus button. And if you go to data transformation, there actually happens to be, come down here where you want to combine items. You can actually merge data from multiple streams from if both are available. So we're going to go to merge, and there's two different ways that we can do this. We can combine matching items together, which we don't want to do. What we want to do is just append everything from both inputs. You can have up to 10 inputs. 10 different inputs can merge together here, but we just want to do this one. So I'm going to come back here, I'm going to kind of drag this, and you can see I can now drag and I can put both these inputs into this one merge node. Let's test this. Okay, so now what this is basically we have a list of the output, platform, and post. Okay, now that I've done this, you see here that says 2 items. Now, all that I need to do here, because I don't need to loop over both of them, how n8n works is going to take each of these items and execute the next node for each of them. So let's just go over what I mean by that. So first off, click the plus button. We need to add an Airtable node. We're going to create a record. Okay, so if you choose schema here, I guess what we need to do first is actually create the social media, go ahead and create the social media table. So here, all I've done is one little trick that I want to show you for Airtable is that if I set just the name of the ID, but if I go to formula for the field type, and then here I type in record ID, this is like having, like a UUID, it's just like kind of like a random string or alphanumeric value for this record. Okay. And we'll see that whenever I go to test this out, but then I have a post Actually, here, I accidentally created one. There's what one looks like. See, alphanumeric, it's random. Okay. So then we have a post column, a platform. Right now, this is a little different. I chose single select for the field type, and I could add in LinkedIn or X. Now, remember, if you do this, it is case sensitive. So make sure when it comes up here, it will error out. If I have the L lowercase, it'll say that's not one of the choices. Okay, so just make sure you have, just to let you know. And then for publish date, if you go to edit the field, have date, you can have it default to the current date whenever it uploads. And then the same thing for published. When you go to edit this field, I have true or false. The default is set to false. So that I actually don't have to, whenever I go to, insert this, I don't have to fill those in n8n. Okay, so I'll have this so that you can download either way, but what I just want to let you know that you could set this up yourself just like this. So now if we go back to the workflow, now I'm going to go to base, choose YouTube, whatever you'll choose whatever your base is called. I'm going to go down what I just created was social media n8n. Now it's going to fetch the columns. So over here, make sure you have schema, right? If you do JSON, right, you could do it this way, but it just might seem a little confusing because you're like, wait, how do I put both of these into one, right? So to make a little bit more sense, I always choose schema. For the platform, just going to drag and drop this here. That's one of the great things. You can just drag and drop, put this post here, and that's all I have to do. Now what's going to do is when we go to run this, it's going to do it for each platform, okay? Or it's going to go for each item. There's 2 items, but I just put the generic expression for the post and the platform. Let's just go and test this. So I'm going to test this Airtable node. See, the output was 2 items. Now, if I come back here, as you can see here, I have 2 different records, right? I know, again, this is LinkedIn. It should be X. It's because I didn't save the X flow. Make sure you save the flows whenever you update them or you create them. So if we come in here, we're going to redo a full test, right? Make sure every time you create something, you test it as you go and then do a full test at the end. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. We're going to test the workflow, and I'm just going to talk while we're doing this. Again, we have an AI agent that connects to the vector store that we had done from the last step where we web scraped every day. That's going to web scrape and insert data into this vector store. And then I execute 2 different sub workflows. Okay, each of these workflows is for a different platform, for different social media platforms. So the output is going to be different. So the way this is set up now is you can go into each sub workflow and then you can edit it the way you would want that to be, like how you want the social media post to be said, how you want it to be written, the tone, the audience it's for, etc. Right? You can go ahead and change that for each sub workflow. Now, if we come back here, now we see that I have one for LinkedIn and I have one for X. You can come in here. X is a little bit, it's a little bit shorter as it should be, especially if you don't pay, you only have 140 characters to work with. And then we just basically have a record of when we save this into our Airtable. Okay, so we have done quite a bit here, and sub workflows I think are amazing. It really gets rid of the spaghetti and like the craziness of if you have everything all on one workflow. Okay, now it might seem, whenever you have that, right, it might seem like it's absolutely amazing, but just because something seems complicated doesn't mean that was the best way to handle it. Maybe it could be a lot simpler, right? Don't be deceived by workflows that seem really complicated, that they couldn't be made simpler. Great job. Now you have a way to create your own social media content. And because we made it separate with the sub workflows, you can just simply add a sub workflow to that main workflow. And you don't have to do anything else to the main workflow. Just connect a single node from the AI agent to the Airtable logging. But now, what if we want to connect to AI agents with our phones? How can we do that? Well, I'm going to show you how to use Telegram as a chatbot to an AI agent. So in this 8th project, we're going to learn how to create Telegram chatbot, where we're going to take voices and text that's going to be sent to an AI agent, and then we're going to use OpenAI to send that response back as text to our Telegram. There's a fair bit going on here, and the real power of this is how we're going to use a lot of different tools to an AI agent to do many different things for us. Okay, so stick around. This might take a little bit, but you'll get through this. Okay, just pause where it's needed and make sure you understand what's going on. Okay, let's get started. And then you'll be greeted by this text that says add first step. So you're gonna click this, the big plus button. This opens up a search bar, and we need to add what's called a trigger node. You always add a trigger node first. So what you're gonna do is type in Telegram, It's going to come up here. And the trigger right here, there's trigger and actions, but the trigger is on a message. So when we receive a message, we want to do something with this. Now, the first thing and the big thing that's going to make this happen is you need to have the credentials for Telegram. As you can see, I already have an account, but you may not have one yet. So you're going to choose create new credential. And then what we need here is an access token. But how do we get the access token? Well, I'm about to show you, but also to follow along in case you might get messed up in some areas, you can just click the open docs. And then this is n8n's documentation on how to access that how to get that access token. But we're going to go through that right now. So first off, create a Telegram account through Google Play Store or the Apple Store. Once you've done that, you create an account, you're going to go to web.telegram.org. Then at the top left here, you're going to search for bot father, capital B, capital F. There are a lot of imitations, but in the chat's context, you want the one that's over 2 million monthly users. And then once you've clicked bot father, at the top right, you're going to see the start button. Just click start. It's going to give you a list of these commands, right? But what we're going to do is type /new bot. Now we're going to start creating our new bot. Now what we need to do next is give it a name. So I can just simply say Tyler n8n bots. It doesn't really matter. But now what we need to do is give it a username ending with bot, like lowercase bot. So now I can say Tyler n8n_bot. Okay, great. Now what we've got is an access token right here. So you click this, do copy it. We're going to go back to our workflow and you're going to paste that in right here and you're going to click save. And now you're going to have your Telegram account. Now I already have mine, so I don't need to save that. But the first thing and what I recommend doing at almost every step is testing it. So now just click this test step. Now it's saying it's going to be listening for a test event. Now go back to your Telegram account. Now where we got the access token, at the top here, it says, congratulations on your new bot. You're on your new bot. You will find it at, you click this link. Now again, you're not going to have any messages here yet. So you'll click the start button. Of course, this isn't going to do anything for me, but in my actual bot that I'm going to use, I'm going to say hello as well. And then if we come back to the workflow, you see, it listened to the event, it got it, and it recognized that the text was hello. So we've logged into our n8n account. We started the Telegram trigger node. Now we need to check for if it's a voice or a text that it's listening for. Now we need to go back to what's called the canvas. So you can either click at the top here or actually click back to canvas. Now we have our Telegram trigger set up. So again, we need to check if it's a text or voice. Now click the plus button here to add another node to this and search for set. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set a property, whether the text is there or not, and then we can determine whether it's a voice or chat or text message. Okay, so what we want to do here is you can drag and drop. So again, because we tested it already, you'll have input here, and this is the output from the trigger node. So you can drag and drop the text, put it right here. However, we need to change this. So I'm going to give this to you. This will be in the JSON here whenever you go to use this, but this is going to say it's optional that there is a text message. That's what the question mark's for. It doesn't really matter, but it's basically saying if the text doesn't exist, then just set the return or set this to an empty text message. So those would be the double quotes, meaning it's an empty string. So if we test this now, and one more thing I want to actually do is I want to modify this message.text to only output just text, not message.text. So now if I test this step again, it's just going to output text. And this is going to be helpful in a few minutes. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is check if that exists or not. If that text message doesn't exist, then we know it's a voice, then we can do something with that. Otherwise, we can send that straight to the AI agent. So click this plus button on the right-hand side. We have different categories of all the nodes. So if we click flow, because we want to do an if statement next. So then we choose that, then choose if, and then basically we can put this in here. If this string is empty, meaning that we then know it's a voice, then we'll go that route. If it's not, meaning this text message exists, then we can just send it straight to the AI agent. And again, like I said, test at every point you possibly can. So click the test step. This is going to false because this text is not empty. So this is going to return false. And then we want to do next is basically connect this to an AI agent, then we'll do the voice. So click this plus button. You can actually just choose advanced AI and then choose AI agent. There's a little bit going on here. So first off, the agent, this is the type of agent. Just choose tools. It doesn't matter. There are other options, but for us, We're just choosing tools. The source for the prompt, it typically checks for a chat message. We're not having a chat, we're using Telegram, but so we wanted to choose define below. Okay, so then we're going to drag this in. So now that we have the text message being sent to the AI agent, we're going to give a system prompt and everything here in just a bit. But the next thing, if I were to test this, it's not going to do anything. It's actually going to error out. If you try this, it's going to error out because it says a chat model subnode must be connected. Well, if we go back to the canvas, as you can see, it's red, besides the fact that it just failed, is we have this red asterisk right here in the middle by the chat model. We need to give this an LLM. We haven't given an LLM yet. So click this plus button. You can choose from any of these on the side here. I'm just going to choose OpenAI for now. Once you chose OpenAI, from the model list, I'm going to choose O3 Mini. Now I can only do that because I already have an OpenAI account. If you don't have that yet, click on Create New Credential. Grab your API key from OpenAI's platform, bring that back here, paste that in, save it, and then now you will have an OpenAI account to use here. And we'll also use it for transcribing in just a minute. Okay, great. So now that we have the chat model, and we can test this step again because we already have the input, right? So test this step. It's gonna probably say something, how are you doing? So the output is, hello there. How can I help you today? Okay, great. Now, you can also drag and drop these to make them, make it look a little more organized. But now what I want to do is actually want to add the voice. If we send a voice over, I want to send that into the agent as well. So it doesn't matter if it's text or voice. To do that, let's first test the workflow because I want you to see why I'm about to do what I'm going to do. So test the workflow. So we're going to test this again. Sorry, I had something queued up. Then go back to Telegram and I want you to send a voice message. So click the microphone down here at the bottom right. Hey, how are you doing today? Then send it. So then my workflow, you see it had the edit field, then it chose the if statement, but instead this if statement is now true because that text is empty. If we come back to the if statement, this JSON text, it came in as empty. So this is now true. Now we need to do something with this. Well, click this plus button. What we actually need to do is we need to download the audio file. So search for Telegram, click this, and then there's a bunch of actions. So what we want to do is actually get a file. So we're going to get that file, and there's like no way to know what to do right now, right? There's actually like no way to know what to do, but we want to choose schema. You can choose three different ways to view all the previous input because it's not just the previous node input that you get all of the previous node's input before the node you're looking at. And what you want to do is come down here, search for voice, and then go to file ID, drag and drop that here. Okay. Then we want to test this step, and we should get a data file of that voice or of the audio. Great. Again, test it. Now we need to transcribe that audio file. So now we want to add another node to this. Let's search for OpenAI. Now you want to choose OpenAI, not OpenAI chat model that is only for the AI agent. Choose OpenAI. And then if you come down to near the bottom, there is a generate audio, transcribe. We want to transcribe a recording, not translate. That's different language to language translating. We'll transcribe a recording, and then you really don't need to change anything here. Now, if you test this step, because we have the data file here, it kind of already has the data field name as data. That's just what it expects. Test the step. Okay, great. I just tested it again. So I actually had an actual message. So it just says, hey, how are you doing? So nothing else has changed. But now all you need to do, now that we have the output, which again is just text, right? That's important, that property name. We're gonna just take this, drag and drop it into the AI agent. So now we have two different nodes attached to the AI agent, and that's perfectly fine. Now, if we come in here, I know that it says empty, but if we come to the schema, right, it's getting this text message, the last one, which was the OpenAI, how are you doing? Now, in order to test this, we actually have to just run this whole thing again. It doesn't like it just testing it the way I had it. So click test workflow at the bottom. So we're starting over. Go back to your Telegram bot. Send, hey, how are you doing today? I'm sending another message. I didn't want to screw that up again. Coming back here, you see it went through. It realized it was a voice. Came in here. Now, if I double click this AI agent, it says, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How about you? What's on your mind today? Okay, great. What we've done is it doesn't matter what's a text or voice. It's listening for Telegram and then sending that to the AI agent, and it's responding with our OpenAI chat model. So we checked for voice or text, and now we've added the AI agent, but we want to give it tools. Let's do that next. Now we just need to start adding all of our tools. So in the AI agent, click this plus button where the tool is, and then all we have to do is search for calendar. So it's really Google Calendar. We're going to click this, and then you're going to come up with a bunch of different properties. Okay, so first off, you're going to need to create a Google Calendar account, and this is so easy whenever using n8n's cloud hosted platform. You just create a new credential. You're going to sign in with your Google account, and that's it. Then you're going to have the credentials for a Google account, which we're going to use for the other Google Calendar tools. So in the resources, you can choose calendar, event, or have a custom API call. We're just going to keep it at event. We want to create, but you can also delete, get many, update, or have another custom API call. But again, we're just going to create for the first one to try it out. To select a calendar, choose your Gmail address. And then when we want to create an event, we don't really want to hard code this, right? This is an AI agent. We want the agent to decide based on our input to input these parameters so that it gets created. So instead, what we're going to have here, you're going to say from AI, and then in here, we're going to just give it, we're just going to give some key value so that the AI knows what to insert in here. So this will be the start event date. Okay, so the AI is going to determine what to put in there for us so that it's not deterministic every time. And then for the end, we want to say, we just copy that, paste it, and we can just put end event date. And then we could also, under the properties down here, to add a field, we can choose description. And guess what? You're gonna do the same thing. Just make sure that you always choose, there's fixed and expression. Just make sure you choose expression so it actually takes this JavaScript expression. But here, we're just gonna let AI put in description. And then that's it, okay? So then you come back here. Now we've created our first tool. Now let's test this out with just one tool, and then we can go ahead and add the rest. So let's go ahead and test the workflow. So it's waiting for a Telegram trigger. We're gonna come back here and say, can you create an event titled testing 1, 2, 3 for tomorrow at 3 p.m. and it will last 30 minutes. Okay, so we sent that. We're gonna come back here. As you can see, it knows it's a text file. The AI agent is deciding what to do, is talking to the OpenAI model. Then it went ahead and created the event, called the tool, created the event. Then if we look at the output real quick, it says that it was successfully created for tomorrow. And now if we check, so today's the 19th, over here, I actually don't have one. So what happened here? And this is important for you to understand. So if we look at the tool, and you can look at the response from the tool when it created it. So it did create it, but it created it for 2023 and October 11th. And then the end date would be October 11th at 5:30 p.m. So why did it do that? Well, that's because it doesn't, that's when like the AI model, that was like the last training date. So we need to actually give it the current date now so that it knows in reference to the current date how to create that event accordingly. So this is where we're going to add our first prompt, our system prompt. So open up your AI agent. For the option, you're going to choose system message. Then here, after you are helpful assistant, we want to say, make sure you have the expression again checked. Say today's date is, and then you can have the double brackets and just say now. So now it knows that it's February 19th when I'm doing this, 2025. And now it's going to have a reference to a date to actually execute that event, so the AI can fill in those events or those properties successfully and correctly in the Google Calendar event where we had here from AI. So if we come back, we're going to test this again. And I'm basically just going to say the same thing. Let me just actually copy this and then paste that in here. And then it's going to come back in here, do the same thing again, talk to the model. Then it's going to fill in the properties for the Google Calendar event. And now it's going to output successfully again. But let's check our calendar now. And now look, we have one for 3 p.m. If I open this up, the description is testing 1, 2, 3, and it lasts for 30 minutes from 3 to 3:30. Okay, awesome. This now worked properly. Well, now what we can do is go ahead and add the other tools as well. So go ahead and click this to add another tool. We're just going to put in type in calendar, filter for Google Calendar. And this time, instead of creating, let's go ahead. Let's just say we want to retrieve an event. So then we want to retrieve it from our email address. For the event ID, again, you don't actually need to know it. You're not going to know the event ID ahead of time. So we want AI to do this for us. So we're going to the curly braces. And again, this is from AI. And then in here, you can just type event_ID. Okay, so now the AI is going to determine the event ID here. Then we can come back here. We can add another tool. We can, again, filter for calendar. We are going to add this here instead of create. Let's call it update. And then again, we are going to choose our calendar, and basically, we are going to choose expression, and then curly braces, and then again, put from AI, then give it event ID, because that's like kind of the name, so it knows like what to fill in from the chat model. And then also, I'm going to add the description. So in case I just want to update the description, make sure this is expression in here, and then from AI description. So new description. Okay. So again, this is going to allow AI to update these fields. Okay, awesome. Now we got 3 here. So we have create, get, and update. And then we're going to go ahead and add one more, which we're going to add a get many calendar tool. Okay, because what we need to do is, in order to get a single event, if we want to just retrieve a single event, we kind of need to get a list of events around that time, because it requires an event ID. Well, it's not just the AI will fill that in, but it needs to fill it in from some information. So in here, instead of creating, we can get many. We're going to select this. Then it's going to be after from event. So from AI can be, we can say day before start time. And then what we can do, we can come in here. After, and then this is, so then this will be day after. So then we can make sure we have enough range based on, if I say I want to get it tomorrow, then it will make sure it checks from today and the day after, get all those, and then make sure you can get the correct one. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Now let's test the workflow. Then I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say, can you get, let me try this again. Can you get my 3 p.m. event tomorrow? So it should come in here. It's going to talk to the AI agent. It's going to first look at it's going to try to get all the events, and then it can try and get that single event after it gets all of them. Or it's just going to get all of them, and then from there, it's going to determine that. So your 3 p.m. event tomorrow is scheduled from 3 to 3:30. The event description reads testing 1, 2, 3. So it didn't even actually need to look at that one. It just got it from retrieving all of them, then it got it. Okay, so that works also. Then let's go ahead and add a Gmail tool, create a draft. So you want to search Gmail. After you add another tool to create a Gmail account, you have to create a new credential. Just sign in again. This is same thing. You're just gonna sign in so you have your credentials. And then in here, we want to, how about instead of message, let's do a draft. So let's create a draft. The subject, this will be an expression. We're going to let AI determine this for us. So this is, kind of hear me say the same thing. This is going to be the subject. So the message will be a summary. So we just want to kind of take a summary and make this an expression. Summary of event. Okay. And then we can also, send to email. So then we're going to do the same thing. We want to send this to somebody as a draft. So let's put this in here and to email, so that whenever we ask it to send it, then it'll be able to grab that from whatever we input as our text or voice message. So I'm asking it to get a 3 p.m. event tomorrow, create a draft for my other email address. So I'm going to send this. It already had that queued. Okay, so it's trying to, again, get the 3 p.m. event tomorrow. It should get that from, I already used the get all event calendar. So it's talking here. It's trying to figure it out. It's going to come here, get the calendar event, and then it will go ahead and call the Gmail draft. So it got the event. Now it's this, and it's going to try and create a draft. It's going to take all the information, and put that information into the Gmail. So it did. Now we need to make sure it created it. Okay, and even though this doesn't look pretty, it says here are the details for your 3 p.m. Tomorrow, and the draft is from my email address to my other one. Now for the 9th project, what we're going to do is add on to this Telegram, and I want you to understand how to use Voice Agent, which is essentially we're going to be adding voice coming back to us on Telegram. Okay, this will be quick, it won't take that long, but essentially we're going to use OpenAI to translate that text into a speech that we can then send back to us in Telegram. So let's go ahead and get started. How we do that is the output that we got, we first need to come in here and add a way to have OpenAI take that text and convert it to speech, which is text to speech. So you're going to come in here, search for OpenAI, click this, and then we're going to generate audio. Okay, now with this, most of this is done. We just need to drag and drop the output, which is, well, that's the name of the property, but it's the input from the previous node, the AI agent. This is what output. So we want the OpenAI to generate the audio from this, okay? Now to really understand how to send that back to Telegram, let's test this really quick. So we need to test the workflow. I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna say, how many events do I have in February? So it's gonna go back. So it's testing it. This was text, so it went through right straight through. It's getting all the events, talking to AI. It's going to then, when that's done with the output, it's going to send that to the generate audio. Then OpenAI is going to go ahead and take that text, convert it to audio. Then the last thing is we're going to have to send that to Telegram. But how do we do that? Okay, so it did that. Now let's go ahead and add another node. This is going to be Telegram again. So we're going to add a Telegram node, except we're going to send an audio file. And I'm going to kind of explain why I did it this way. So for any time you're working with Telegram, you need to have the chat ID, which is in this case, the name of our chatbot that we have created in Telegram. So in order to get that, you can either hard code that, you can hard code it by going to the initial trigger. Once you do it once, it has the chat ID. You can copy that, put that right here in the chat ID, or what I'm about to show you is you can go back to the schema, go back to the Telegram trigger, and then just drag and drop the property here. So now that it's not hard coded, in case you want to use this for another workflow that's another bot, then you don't have to go and change that property. You can just leave that right here. So now we have so up here, you see there's a binary file. Anytime you have like a file like this, it's a binary file. So here, let's choose binary file. It already knows that it's called data. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this end to end. So we're going to test the workflow. Now we're going to wait again. Can you give me all of the events I have for February and then create another draft email about it? It's going to recognize that was a voice command. It's going to send essentially the same thing. It's going to get all the events for February, then create the draft, generate the audio for that. Then once it generates the audio, it takes that file and then sends that as audio to Telegram. And then finally we can listen to it and we will have completed the whole workflow. Look, I understand that this is not easy from end to end, especially the first time you're doing this, but you're doing great. You can do this. Okay, so it's generating the audio or it's generating the output still. Okay, so it completed. It generated the calendar or got the calendar events. Then it created a draft email, transcribed that into audio, and then send that back as a Telegram message. Well, let's listen to it.
I've compiled all your February events and created a draft email with a summary. Check your Gmail drafts for the email titled February Calendar Events Summary. Let me know if you need any edits.
And here it is. Here is a draft email of everything I have going on in February. Perfect. Okay, now for the last project, this is going to be about MCP. Okay, now everybody's been using a community node for MCP, but now n8n literally just came out with the release. As I'm recording this, this is April 10th. As I'm recording this, today they came out with this. And so I am going to make this the last project in this course so that you kind of at least have a simple understanding of how to connect servers and clients together. Okay, so we have a little bit to go over, and I understand MCP is a little confusing, so I'm going to try and explain it really quick for you with some diagrams, and then we're going to get right into using it with n8n. Well, MCP is an open protocol that standardizes how applications provide context to LLMs. It also provides a standardized way to connect AI models to different data sources and tools. So how does this work? Well, MCP follows a client-server architecture where the host application can connect to multiple servers. Well, what is an MCP client? Well, it's simply a program like Claude Desktop or Cursor that wants to have access to data through the Model Context Protocol. And this protocol maintains a one-to-one connection with MCP servers. Well, what is an MCP server? Well, this is essentially just a lightweight program that allows us to retrieve data from different types of sources through the Model Context Protocol. Those data sources can be local to your computer files, or they can be remote services such as going through APIs. For instance, you get access to a Slack MCP server, enabling Claude or whoever your MCP client is, and to interact with the Slack workspaces. And the tools available is you can list the channels, you can post messages, you can reply, you can add reactions to messages, etc. These are all the tools available through this MCP server. Now, even with that explanation, it might not be the easiest to understand. So the best way to learn is to do it. Now, there are a few steps to make this MCP server happen, but what we're going to first do is after you create a new workflow, at a first step, we're going to type in MCP, and you can see that there is an MCP Server Trigger. And this is going to expose n8n tools to an MCP client. So now there's a test URL and production URL. Go to the production URL. What you can do here, this path, you can name this whatever you want, right? So I can say Tyler YouTube, right? And this changes the MCP URL. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. But now I have this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. Now that I have the server trigger, what I want to do is we want to add tools to this MCP server. First, do calculator. So I'm going to type in calculator. I'm going to select calculator. And there's really nothing here for us to do right now. Okay, so what we right now have is an MCP server that's going to be activated on a trigger, and we gave it a calculator tool. Now, in order to be able to use this tool, we'd have an MCP client that can connect to this MCP server. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, there are a number of clients to choose from, but the one that comes with MCP, because it's Anthropic's protocol, we are going to use Claude Desktop. I'll have a link on how to download Claude Desktop, but I'm just going to go ahead and open up the app. Okay, so we're going to come up to Claude, then go to Settings. And then here we're going to go to Developer. Now, in a previous video, I had added a file system and a weather service, but we're going to go to Edit the Config. If you don't have this yet, there will be a different menu here, but you can just go ahead and edit the config as well, and it's going to direct you and automatically create a Claude Desktop config.json. Okay, so I want to go ahead and right-click this. I do not want to look it up. I want to right-click and open with cursor. You can use Windsurf. It doesn't matter what IDE that you're going to use to edit it. We're just editing the JSON right now. Okay, so before this, these are the two servers that I did have. Okay, what we want to do now is we want to create another MCP server that allows us to use n8n. So what I'll actually do is I'm just going to go ahead and remove these, and then I'm going to paste in what you need. And I'll have this so that you can use it as well. But it's, again, whenever we are executing these servers, they're really just like command line arguments that we're executing, right? So we're using npx, then all four of these are arguments for this command. Okay, and so you can see here, I have this URL. This might be different for you, but what I've done now is if we go back to our MCP Server Trigger, this production URL, now you could use test, but we're gonna go ahead and copy the production URL. We also don't need to worry about authentication right now. So I'm just going to click on this to copy. I'm also going to make sure that this is active, not inactive, because again, when you're working with anything with the production or test URL, in order to use the production URL, the workflow has to be active. Okay, so now we're going to go back to cursor, and then you would come in and you would copy and paste that URL, the n8n webhook URL right here. Then what you need to do is save this. We're going to open up Claude Desktop again. Now, in order to make it work with Claude Desktop, you have to close out. So we're going to command quit. I am going to open this up again. So getting Claude settings. Then if we go to developer, we see that n8n is running, and we got rid of the other two MCP servers. Okay, great. Now we need to make sure that this actually works. Okay, again, when we go back to n8n, we have an MCP Server Trigger that's coming from Claude Desktop. So we're going to ask Claude Desktop a question to calculate some simple math. Then it's going to come in here, it's going to trigger the server, and then it's going to look for the tools it has. Well, right now it only has calculator tool. It's going to use that calculator to come up with a response and get that back in Claude Desktop. Let's go and do that now. And also, here is the little hammer. You can see that we have that calculator tool, and this is from the server n8n. Okay, so let's say, can you tell me what 5x plus 9 is if x equals -2? Use using the calculator tool. Okay, so now what it should do is should try to make sure that it has the tool available. Now it's going to go through some security, so make sure that we are going to allow this for this chat. You can see the input is 5 times -2 plus 9 because it inserted the x variable there. And then we got the response is -1. Okay, now if we go back to n8n, if you have something active, we're not going to see it. In order to actually see that it happened, we have to go at the top here, executions. And you can see we have an execution that I just made, right? This is, less than a minute ago. Okay, so if we go to, let's open up the calculator tool, we can see the query was 5 times -2 plus 9, and the response was -1. Okay, so we went to the MCP server, which we got there from the MCP client, and then we were able to retrieve that response and send that back to the client, which in this case was Claude Desktop. Okay, that's great. Now we have created an MCP Server Trigger that can connect to our MCP client using Claude Desktop, but I want to create a chatbot inside of n8n using my MCP servers. Well, how do we do that? Well, what I've done is I created another workflow. I've created a simple chatbot that we have already created before. So we're waiting on a chat message received. I have an AI agent. I've given it the Anthropic chat model. But now what I want to do is I want to add a tool, and I want to search for MCP Client Tool. So I'm going to search for this MCP Client Tool. And what this is doing is it's looking for the SSE endpoint of our MCP server. So what we're going to type in is that production URL that we had gotten before. And then what you can do is you can include all tools, selected tools, or all except certain tools. So I could come to selected, and then I could select calculator, but for now I'm just going to choose all. So it has available all the tools here. Okay, and then what we can do is we can open the chat, and I can say, what is 3 times 9 plus 7 cubed using calculator tool? And I spelled that wrong, that's okay. But what it's going to do now, the AI agent, it is going to go to the MCP client. What happened here? Well, the input query was my input, and the tool it used was the calculator tool, and we got the response of 370. So here in MCP Server Trigger, if we go to executions, and the response was 370, and the query was the query that I had mentioned. So what this setup means is now we have this chatbot inside of here, but with this project MCP server, we can add multiple tools in here. Sorry, I have to go to editor. We can add multiple tools in here. So let's go ahead and add another one. All right, so I'm going to click on tools. I'm going to go to add another one. Let's use the Google Sheets tool. Okay, and then, before we've already created a Google Sheets account, and we already have a form from earlier, and that was the RSS feed. That was the very first project we did. And then, of course, you can use any other one. I'm going to choose the feed sheet. We're going to come back here. What we need to do now is we need to save this. We're going to go back here to our AI agent. We haven't done anything here yet. Then if we come back to our workflow where we have our MCP client, if we go down to tools, go to selected, you can see now we have a Google Sheets tool as well. But we're just going to choose all. And then now back in our chat, let's just ask a question about the feeds that we've gotten. So I'm just going to ask you to summarize and tell me how many RSS feeds I have from Sheets. Then let me bring this up a little bit here. There's a lot of information it's getting from the markdown whenever we got from the n8n blog. Okay, and so the RSS feed summary, all 5 entries appear to be from the same source about n8n. That is true, but it also tells me when all the entries were added. Now, if I just go here really quick, there are only 5, and they are all of the same, from the same RSS feed. Okay, great. We now have in n8n a chat with an MCP client that connects to an MCP server with its own tools. Thank you so much for coming to the end of this course. If you watched most of this, even half of this, I know that you will have enough information that you can now build your own AI animations. And when something new comes out, you have a lot of the understanding already. You just have to learn that new little thing, then add it on to your AI flow. But you got this. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Again, I help everybody out in my community. If you have anything that you want to ask me, go ahead and join now. I have people that are selling products to clients using AI, and I would love to help you out too. Okay, so please join down in the description below. Until then, here are some more courses, and I will see you next video.